right, welcome, welcome. I think we will go ahead and get started. I am thrilled to be here with all of you. I feel like there's a mood of everybody running around a little bit today. I feel like it's a kind of a crazy day. So thank you for making time in the crazy day to join us for this exciting webinar. This is the sixth webinar in the six-part Oregon Youth in Focus series brought to you by Oregon State University Extension Services. And we are going to be focusing in this time on college and career readiness. I am Catherine Plog Martinez from Knowledge to Power Catalyst. I will be facilitating our conversation today. If you haven't been with us previously, we have been engaging in a rich series of conversations focusing on the broad theme of thriving and readiness and really digging in on specific areas. And I will share in the chat a little bit later the link where you can grab and go back and watch the full webinar series, including today's posting. But I want to jump us right into hearing from our amazing, amazing group of panelists. So with that, I would like to introduce Cheney Mosley. Cheney is an associate professor and director of the School of Agriculture at Middle Tennessee State University. And Cheney is going to be sharing a bit of his research with us today. So Cheney, I will let you take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for joining us today. As Catherine said, I'm Cheney. I'm at Middle Tennessee State University, which is located right in the geographic center or the middle of Tennessee. Live in Nashville, have traveled around through a variety of perspectives. And today I'm happy to share information. I title this part of our presentation, Preparing Youth for What's Next, Insight from Research on Career Readiness, Career Tech Education, and Workforce Development. My email address is on there if you need it. I think there may be some bios being shared later on, etc. And I know we'll have a time for a Q&A later on as well, and I look forward to moving into that. So I wanted to provide some information about the current projects that I'm working on, and this screen here captures it quite well. So my hands are quite busy. Here's an overview of some of the projects that are really I'm dedicating a lot of my time to. So one is using virtual reality to enhance career exploration and workforce training for youth. Another is partnering with industry to expand non-formal workforce development, especially in economically distressed communities here in Tennessee. I'm working on the promotion of project-based learning in K-12 settings to help bridge classroom to instruction with real world, or the world of work, as I like to say. I'm leading some professional development initiatives for teachers that focus on career readiness, addressing mental health in youth and adults through agricultural-based suicide prevention initiatives, working to equip educators to teach complex and controversial issues with confidence as well as neutrality, and integrating information literacy into STEM education for rural youth to strengthen their critical thinking and their career skills. When we were typing in our names and where we were from, I saw quite a few folks who were with extension organizations or working in 4-H. I'll tell you, I'm a product of 4-H, and I'm excited that my oldest child is very involved in 4-H. He's in the Honor Club, and he'll be moving into high school next year. I'll bring him up a little bit later on, but he's already attended 2 4-H events this summer. So those of you working in extension, thanks for what you do. It certainly impacts our youth, and we can address some non-formal opportunities to, such as 4-H, that will facilitate career exploration and workforce readiness for our youth in those programs as well. So in this presentation, regarding the research, I'm mainly going to focus on the Career and Technical Education Research Network. This is 2.0 version. They're in their second iteration of the network. This is a national hub for career and tech ed research, researcher training, and the dissemination of findings. And they have a mission of advancing rigorous, evidence-based career and tech ed research that informs policy and strengthens practice. And the reason I'm pulling from this network is the focus on rigor and evidence-based. Sometimes, people will throw around statistics, and statistics can come from a variety of sources, but just because there's a statistic, it does not mean that it comes from rigorous research or evidence-based research. And what I really like or appreciate about the research that comes from this university is they focus on what works, for whom it works, where it works, and why it works through causal and impact studies. And so I won't go too deep into this piece of what it means to be causal and what it means to be an impact study, other than this is what makes their research rigorous, right? So it would stand the test against someone saying, are these results reliable or not? And so I think it's a very credible resource for information related to CTE. Later on, if we have time, I'm happy to walk you through their website and share some of the other resources that they offer. But briefly, this is what their website looks like if you go to their landing page, and you can see there's a lot of information there. So if you're curious, you can maybe jot this note down. Once I finish my part of the presentation, I will also drop a link to their website as well. So we're going to look at 4 specific research studies that come out of the network and briefly describe those and talk about some of the findings from these studies. And I'll share some of my some additional information based on my experience as well. So this first one comes from the P-TECH grades 9 through 14, or 9 through 14, so that extends 2 years post-secondary. Pathways to Success, and these are some findings from New York City. Now, I will share that I've got 2 studies that we're talking about from New York City, and I think that's important because career and technical education is delivered across the state, across the country rather, in many different ways. And even in some states, it's delivered in a variety of ways depending on the county or the location. It can also be delivered through public schools or private schools, and it looks different in a variety of ways. So we're going to look at a lot of different things today as we consider the research. The purpose of this study was to evaluate the P-TECH 9 through 14 school on their outcomes. And this used a random assignment, so random adds to that rigor. So P-TECH is a 6-year program, and it combines high school with an associate's degree and work-based learning. And this dual degree model focuses on STEM fields with employer and college partnerships. The reason I think that we focus on those STEM fields with employer partner relationships is to ensure that as we prepare youth for the world of work, we are exposing them to what I like to refer to as H3, career opportunities that will be characterized as requiring high skills, reflective of high wages once you have those skills and are employed, and also in high demand, right? In a previous job, I was the director of career and tech ed for a very large school system, Metro Nashville Public Schools. And during my time there, 4 to 5 years in that role, we worked diligently with our industry partners to sunset programs that did not align with those 3 H's: high skill, high wage, high demand. And sometimes in my work across the country, I've discovered that we have career and technical education programs that are really cool and really interesting for a lot of students, but there's not a demand for students in that field. And I think if we continue offering those, that's a disservice to those students. It's a promise that cannot be fulfilled. We're preparing you for the world of work, except there aren't work opportunities once you graduate high school. So I really like the design of P-TECH. And so here's what we learned. The P-TECH students did earn more high school and college credits than a control group. The control group would be those not enrolled in P-TECH. Students in this school system or this school were 26% more likely to participate in dual enrollment. If we're not familiar, that is when students are in high school, but they are also taking college classes at the same time. Had significantly higher internship participation than the control group, so that real world experience or work-based learning. Male students in this group earned college degrees at a rate 4 times higher than the control group of males. There were not significant differences in high school graduation rates between P-TECH and the control group, and the success was tied to the quality of employer and college partnerships. That one is critically important. Just because there is an employer or an industry who says, yes, we're partnering with this school system or this school-based program to provide opportunities for students, and just because there's a college that says, yeah, we'll be one of your partners, nominal partnerships, those in name only, aren't very effective. And that's why this last bullet point's important. The quality of the employer and the college partnership. I like to summarize that as the engagement. So the more engaged these higher education partners are, or these industry partners are, the more successful students will be. And so this is, I think, some good lessons come from this research. We'll move on to the next one. By the way, when I talked about in demand or high demand, I saw some balloons pop up above the screen, and I don't know which one of you participants did that, but I appreciate that. So it sounds like I'm not the only one who thinks we should really focus on those jobs that will earn a living wage and also have opportunities after high school. The next study we'll focus on was addressed the Connecticut Technical High School system. And so this was an evaluation of the impact of attending a technical high school that focused on college and career outcomes for students in Connecticut. Again, this goes back to what I said earlier. Career Tech Ed is delivered in a variety of formats across the country. So Connecticut has a technical high school system. Where I live in Tennessee, that is not something that we have. And so take this information. I think the results are still, the information is helpful regardless of where we are about the promise of career and tech ed. So in Connecticut, they have 16 standalone technical high schools, and through those schools, they offer a variety of career tech ed programs for school. The students do apply in the eighth grade, and they take three or more career and tech ed courses if they are accepted into these schools. Now, if you look at this, the lower left-hand block, male students experienced significant positive outcomes, and it's quite small. If you can read it, I'm not sure, but in this school system, males were graduating high school at a rate that was 10% higher than males not participating in the technical high school system. Additionally, males who graduated from this high school experienced the high school technical system experienced higher quarterly earnings at age 23 or higher at a rate that was 32% greater than males who were not in the technical high school system. Additionally, there was in for grade 9 or ninth grade, attendance improved, and in grade 10, test scores improved compared to the control group, those not in the technical system. Initially, with this study, the college enrollment was lower, but that gap narrowed by age 23. And finally, the benefits of attending this school seem to stem from the technical high school experience, not just the CTE coursework. And that's important because it speaks to the power of a network. And in these technical high schools, it's not just CTE. You've got English language arts, mathematics, social studies, also things like physical education and some other more global classes, potentially foreign language or arts and things like that. And so it's that network and how the school is executed in a technical school system, not just the CTE courses. I think that's important to distinguish because we don't want to say just attending or taking three CTE courses will lead to these outcomes. Moving on, we've got a study of North Carolina's career and technical education dual enrollment, their program Pathway to Post-Secondary Success. So this study evaluated the impact of their dual enrollment program in North Carolina, and they analyzed the outcomes for 525,000 students over 7 years, and it was a quasi-experimental design. All that being said, it was a very rigorous study that looked at a lot of students. So this isn't just 50 or a couple of hundred of students. We're talking more than 500,000 here. In North Carolina and in many states, there is an opportunity for tuition-free dual enrollment in technical courses. In Tennessee, for example, high school juniors can take two college courses at their junior year of high school at no cost to the student. It's paid for by the state, and they can take an additional two at their senior year. Beyond that, the student or the student's family would have to pay for it. So the idea is that attaining the dual enrollment would lead to workforce credentials or technical degrees. And some of the results are highlighted here that students who participated in this dual enrollment program were more likely to graduate. The result is that there was more than 2% higher high school graduation rates for participants compared to non-participants. Additionally, there was a greater than 9% higher college enrollment within 1 year. In other words, students who participated were more likely to enroll in college. And students who participated were earned 6 times more college credits in high school than their peers who did not participate. And the effects were especially positive for students from historically underrepresented and low-income backgrounds. And so I think that's really important to think about how do we serve all students and not just those who are represented in the majority and do not come from low-income backgrounds. So if we were to wrap this up, Korean technical dual enrollment had some really positive impacts for the students who participated in this study in North Carolina. And then the last one that I want to share some information about is this New York City CTE dedicated high school study. So this study examined the outcomes of students in 37 career and technical education dedicated high schools compared to similar peers who were not in CTE dedicated high schools in New York City. Again, a lot of students. So roughly 19,000 students between 2013 and 2016. The methods were rigorous to compare these students. All of the students in the CTE dedicated schools participated in a career and tech ed program of study for 4 years, grades 9 through 12. And they experienced higher overall credit accumulation, which was due to more CTE coursework. There was increased student engagement and better attendance. These students were more likely to stay on track for a Regents diploma. This is specific to New York. They had high school graduation and college enrollment rates that were similar to their non-CTE peers. There was smaller, focused CTE schools seemed to show stronger impacts on graduation and college enrollment, and the larger selective schools with varied programs showed no impact or negative results. So this is good, right? Attending a larger school that may not be CTE focused but offers more things doesn't have negative impacts, but they didn't experience these positive impacts like overall credit accumulation or increased student engagement or higher student attendance. And what I can tell you is when I was a director of Career Tech Ed in Nashville, we had a 5-year plan. We monitored results, and over the implementation of the Career Academy model, which is small learning communities, smaller schools within larger schools where every student had a career pathway and was in a career academy, we experienced similar results. Our graduation rates went through the roof. They had significant increases. Discipline rates and out of school suspension significantly decreased. Average daily attendance rates increased. And it was similar to one of those early studies that we looked at here, where the Career Academy encompasses teachers from all content areas, not just career and technical education. So hopefully this has provided some insight. Some additional thoughts I wanted to share is that I grew up in a small rural area and I attended a K-12 public school. It is still K-12 public school. There were 32 people in my class. This was in the 90s, so it was called vocational education, but I had exposure to career and technical education. Um, Here at MTSU, I focus on agriculture, but I took 4 years of agriculture courses in high school. It introduced me to career opportunities that I would not have known about had I not attended that school and been in those programs. I'm an advocate of career and tech ed. My oldest child, he's 14. I talked about him earlier. He starts high school next year, and he will be attending a non-traditional high school that focuses on work-based learning. He'll be in the school 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, he will have an internship with an industry partner, non-paid internship. I share this to say there are multiple models for how we can embed career and tech ed at all grade levels or career exploration, starting in even in pre-K if we want to, but especially in early elementary, middle, and high school. Formal CTE opportunities like those we've discussed in this presentation are important. But those include structured coursework aligned to career pathways. And there are a lot of non-formal opportunities as well, such as attending camps or workshops or job shadows. And then work-based learning really connects students to the opportunities that are aligned with the real world. And I think that's so important. So I will stop sharing now. Thank you for attending this part of the presentation. Later on, maybe I can answer some questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I was really struck. I appreciate you sharing your own experience and your son's experience. I was sitting with a high school rising junior from actually North Carolina yesterday, and he said that he really feels like school should help you strive for what you actually want
There
versus
you go.
just focusing on all the things you must learn. And I think that, and he was very much speaking to career and technical education, and I think your presentation really highlighted that. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We appreciate your time. And I am now going to ask Emily Henry to join us on screen and Carla Gay. Emily is the director of OSU Open Campus and Oregon State University's Division of Extension and Engagement. Thanks for being here, Emily. And Carla is the executive director of Innovation and Partnerships for the Gresham Barlow School District 10J. Each of you are in your roles very focused on college and career readiness. And I'd love to kick us off just by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role and your organization's focus on college and career readiness. Emily, would you be willing to kick us off?
Sure, happy to. So, thanks so much for having me join today. As Catherine said, Emily Henry, I'm the director of Open Campus. We're a program in the Extension Service here at Oregon State, and we are super focused on college and career access. And part of that is also supporting students on transfer pathways from community college to university. So, several of our faculty members are based in community colleges and spend a lot of time in the schools and supporting students on any pathway, trade, CTE, career focus, 2 year, 4 year colleges and universities. So, yeah, great fit and excited to chat today.
Great, welcome. Carla.
Hi there, everyone. So nice to be here with you. My name's Carla Gay. I use her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of Innovation and Partnerships in Gresham Barlow School District. And we are a mid-sized school district of about 11, almost 12,000 students, about 10 miles east of Portland, Oregon. The role that I play is rather unique in a district this size, as evidenced by my title. One of my jobs is to supervise an array of services that support equitable access to advanced coursework, including CTE and post-secondary. And so for us, that has started about 7 years ago with creating a vision of preschool to post-secondary pathways to success. I think that's certainly not a unique way to think about the future of our students. And that includes STEM, CTE, elementary pathways, and a whole variety of initiatives through community partnerships, business, industry, and community-based partnerships. It also includes tending to the whole student, which is what some of our counselors have really leaned into, is social emotional learning as a tool for student engagement and crosswalking that with career ready skills and seeing really where that intersection is. And so that's kind of a brief synopsis of my job in Gresham Barlow.
That's great, Carla. Thank you. I want to dig in a little bit more on what you just started to introduce for us. So, as a district, you all work with students, families, and communities to create a framework for college and career readiness, the preschool to post-secondary pathways for career success that you just mentioned. Can you walk us through just a little bit about that roadmap for students? And in particular, I'd love it if you could really share with us how you all leverage it to engage students who have maybe disconnected from the school system, or folks are seeing are on that path towards being disconnected.
Yeah, we were just talking about this yesterday with a couple of my team members. So I'm happy to do it. I will say it's a work in progress. I have alternative education in my wheelhouse of responsibilities, and it's kind of the core of my professional career, is working with kids who've been marginalized or pushed out of our educational system for a whole variety of reasons. So we are in a process of really trying to examine how do we make sure that the students who have experienced the most difficulty in education actually have access to career technical education as a tool towards engagement and future possibilities. So our in-district alternative program has, with our connections coordinator, has worked really hard with our local high schools and CTE programs to make sure that those students who can participate do. We're also really looking at how we engage students earlier in elementary school, in middle school, so that they start to see a future for themselves before they feel disconnected from education. And then we leverage our state funding through a bill called Measure 98, which was passed in 2016. It's now called the High School Success Act. And that funding source has really pushed us to evolve to think about everything from our forecasting process for students to how we ensure that our students with disabilities and our students who are new to the country or who have emerging English language skills can still have access to some of the same programs with the right kinds of supports in place. So it's a journey, but the framework is thinking about preschool all the way through post-secondary. Our goal, while high school graduation may be a K goal, our goal for students is adult success. So what does that look like? And what is our role in playing that? And particularly around those key transition points. So early kindergarten into kindergarten and first grade, fifth grade into middle school into high school, and then really starting in 10th grade all the way through post-secondary transition. So really thinking about those key transition points as levers for accessing all of the resources that are out there. And it's a work in progress.
Yeah, no, always, always. I wonder, Carla, if you can give us an example. We just heard a lot from Dr. Mosley about career and technical education. I think a lot of us can envision college and career readiness for a high school student. What does building towards adult success look like at the elementary level or even the preschool level?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we know from some of the research out there is that students who have families who have gone to college or who have been able to have a career often hear about those post-secondary opportunities from the time they are very young children. And then that allows them to sort of imagine a future for themselves that is quite broad and expansive. Whereas if their families have not had access to information or career opportunities themselves, the students may not envision themselves as doing something beyond what they see their parents doing. And so part of it is really engaging families and students to envision a future for themselves that both supports parents, but also the students in thinking about what that looks like. So on practical terms, it's everything from reading stories to very young children and having them talk about making the connection between the character in the story and a career skill or a career pathway or something that they want to be, or what kind of characteristic did that character embody that might be really important when you're a grown up. And so really helping connect the dots at that level and beyond kind of what very young kids see themselves to be, but really starting to help them imagine a bigger world. By the time they're in upper elementary and middle school, they're really doing some tangible experiences with professionals, with job fairs, with career experts, with field trips, through the STEM field, through non-traditional fields that maybe they've never been exposed to before. And then by the time they're going into high school, those become work-based learning experiences where they're doing a job shadow or they're going again on a field trip, but maybe a different field trip. And it's important for them to experience those multiple times and to realize what they don't want to be as much as what they do want to be. So that by the time they graduate from high school, they have a plan for themselves. And then even if that plan changes, they have enough skills to know that they can chart a new path and that that's okay.
Yeah, thanks for making that really concrete for us. As you were talking, it actually reminds me of how we talk about having a literacy rich environment for really little kids. We need to have like a post-secondary and career rich environment as well to help them envision and
Well,
make
and I
those
would say they're
connections.
the same.
Yeah,
Literacy is the foundation for access to all
yeah,
of that other rich experiences. So in like integrating
Nice.
those so that it feels seamless to students is really critical for their future success.
That's excellent. Thank you. Emily, would love to bring you into the conversation. So Open Campus supports students on any post-secondary pathway, including trades, career and technical education, community college, or university. So we just heard a little bit about this work from a K-12 perspective, but can you tell us a bit about how Open Campus differs from other post-secondary support programs? And why is OSU, as a four-year institution, why do they see this broader work as so important?
Yes, yeah, happy to share. So I think we're really fortunate to be part of the extension service. So we're always clear about that when we're out working with students. Like, we're not admissions, we're not recruiters, like, we're not here to get students to OSU, right? Like, we're here to look at any post-secondary plan. And that's really our main goal, is that every student is leaving high school that we work with a post-secondary plan, whatever that looks like. And so I think some of the things that make us a little bit different, there's tons of kind of these college access programs out there, and they're great partners that we work with closely. I think one of the things that we can bring to the table is that we kind of stick with students throughout these milestones. So we can work with them on the college applications and FAFSA and ORSA and those sorts of things and kind of those milestones. But after graduation, we're checking in over the summer too. So, like, are you staying on track? Is everything working out okay? Have you figured out where you're going to be living if you're off to college? Or have you signed up for your classes yet? Or did you enroll in that program you were going to? And kind of keeping with them throughout the journey. A lot of times those are handoff points, and that can be kind of where students fall off in this post-secondary process. And so we really try to stay alongside the student. And even once they're potentially in college, they may be reaching back out if they have questions and need support. We don't have any qualifications to be part of our program. Most of our students we work with are in rural and frontier areas. A lot of them are first generation students, facing some of the things that Carla mentioned, but we'll work with any student that comes to us that needs support. And we really see ourselves as kind of like navigators there to help navigate these resources, help students along the way, make sure they feel empowered to keep that up, because of course, once they're out of high school and sort of on their own, they may have less, parental involvement and that sort of thing. They kind of need to be able to sort of advocate for themselves. And so building up some of those skills too, and making sure they feel comfortable and they have the information they need and can kind of navigate the systems that are often pretty challenging, even if you're somebody that knows all the steps of applying to college and financial aid and all those things. There's so many steps to that process and check-in points and follow-ups. And so making sure students have the information to really feel comfortable being a self-advocate, as they'll need to be as they go on into adulthood. So yeah, those are some of the things that sort of set us apart. And then I think OSU, I mean, part of it is we're a land grant institution, right? That extension service that we really are obligated to serve the entire state and equitably. But I think part of it is our mission too, right? So higher education, whatever that looks like, whatever post-secondary education, training programs, et cetera, look like, that kind of like brings us all up, right? Like, we're invested in that. That's our mission, is bringing that forth. And so felt really fortunate that, again, we can support students on any pathway. Most of our students do not go to OSU. And so it's been nice to have that freedom to support students on any journey that they're on, and knowing how important any of that post-secondary, as our other presenters have mentioned, how important that is tied to economics, but like quality of life, health, all those things, of course, are tied to access to education and career opportunities. So that's kind of the bigger picture that we're all focused on too, certainly.
Yeah, I love that it's really about building the community as much as it is about the university itself. And I was really struck by the fact that you just shared that most of your students don't come to OSU, right? That this isn't about recruiting. It really is about these pathways and supporting young people across the state. I also really honed in on something you said, that a lot of your work is with rural and frontier communities. I'm wondering if you can share more about the need for this support in those rural and frontier communities and what that looks like.
Sure. So we have traditionally focused on rural and frontier. So frontier, folks aren't familiar, that terminology is like a little, people have different feelings about that, but I think the distinction between rural and frontier is that frontier is like extra rural, right? So there's different definitions of that, but even if you use a pretty restrictive one of like 6 people per square mile, 10 of Oregon's counties, we only have 36, so like almost a third of Oregon's counties are considered frontier. So this is like ultra rural. There's very few people. They're often at least like 30 to 90 minutes away from any sort of like city center, which can be quite small itself, right? So these are different. It sounds similar to what Cheney mentioned in terms of his experience with school. Like some of the graduating classes might be 15 students, some of them might be 5 students. So like these are super rural areas. They're very small schools. Oftentimes, there's not a dedicated, the school might not have a counselor at all, or there might be a counselor for all of one counselor for all of K through 12, right? And so there's just different access in terms of what they have available at their school, what's in close proximity. We talk about a lot of the schools we work with are in education deserts. And so these are areas where there is nothing higher ed anywhere nearby. So no community college, no university. They may be more than an hour away. It may be more than 3 hours away. And so students aren't seeing anything higher ed nearby. They don't necessarily have access to dual enrollment. If they do, it's going to be online a lot of times. And then if you live in a super frontier area, do you have access to internet? Often not in our case. So there's just all these extra challenges. And we know being far away from a university does result in lower application rates and lower college going rates and enrollment and that sort of thing. So all those things really do matter, and just not having that necessarily dedicated support at a school that you may be working with teachers or whoever else can kind of help you. And so we've really focused on these rural and frontier spaces just because there's such a high need, even though there may be a very small number of students, and still seeing the importance in that and getting out and working with students. And so that's been something that we've done since we started in like 2009, but is something that we've been increasing some of our focus on, is that, yes, we can be in a rural area, but what about the tiny schools that are outside of even the rural, larger schools that we're working at, that we can be getting out and supporting these students, knowing that there is such a high need for that support, and physically getting out in the schools and working directly with the students. And when there are 5 seniors, you know, you really can work with all of them. And so we have some coordinators for their counties. They work with literally every single senior in their large county, which may be 50 people, but, you know, to be able to make that kind of impact in a community, and knowing that these students may want to stay in the community, may want to leave to go off to a training or, you know, college or university and return to the community, bring that back with them. I think that just helps contribute to even what some of Carla was mentioning, of like being able to see beyond maybe what your parents do or just what's in your super small area. You know, if there's some people that leave and come back, or even just students that you know that have gone on to do different things, I think that helps build up the whole community's vision of what's possible and what opportunities are out there. So that is part of the reason that we've been so rural and frontier focused.
Yeah, that last point that you just shared was the exact connection that I was making, that exposure piece and that ability to see more broadly than just what's in your community is such a critical piece, in addition to having that support that maybe otherwise isn't there and wouldn't exist. And so some of that support is starting to get to my next question, which is that certainly neither of you do this work alone, right? College and career readiness takes a lot of partnerships, a lot of engagement with other institutions, with the broader community. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what those partnerships look like. And Carla, I'd love to start with you again. And you bring a really unique perspective. A lot of the folks on our webinar are from Extension, coming from that partner perspective. What partners need to know about working with districts to enhance the reach and broaden the range or expand capacity around college and career readiness?
Oh, that's a dissertation. A lot. I think, you know, working in, if you've never worked in a public school district or a system, it is its own very unique ecosystem of employment. And I think sometimes partners don't quite understand that. They remember their own experience in education, but they don't really know how it works from a professional or business sense. So one of the things is understanding sort of the routine of the school year, the rhythm of the school year, and that there are times in the school year that are really more difficult to get the kind of responsiveness that is needed from leadership, from people in positions who can like sign an agreement, make something happen. And then there are times when it's a little, there's a little more bandwidth to make that happen. So I think that that's important. It's also important to know that like we are working with children. I used to work at the community college, and it's even though we were serving high school students, the higher ed system doesn't have the same parental involvement. Although we have some parents who want to be that involved, they don't always have that same parental involvement as they do K-12. So our partners really understanding that we have all kinds of reporting and background checking type sorts of things that are unique to the K-12 system, but also that we really need partners. We absolutely in K-12 cannot do the breadth of responsibility of taking care of students. Sometimes their very basic needs, food, shelter, those sorts of things, while also educating them, taking care of their mental and social emotional health, and then preparing them to be young adults out in the workforce or in a post-secondary education environment. So our partners play a critical role in showing up in our spaces, working directly with students, bringing a different perspective to that work, and assuming sort of a rightful presence. This is public education, kind of like the land grant university that Emily referred to. Like, public education is for every single student who walks through our doors, who lives in our communities. And so we serve everyone. And in that respect, we want our community partners to be a part of that process and understand their role, but also come with some humbleness, some willingness to learn, some patience. And then the other thing, I think what we need from partners is consistency. So one of the things is, oh, I'll just drop in. Our kids won't show up. And we often hear from partners, I come, but I came and nobody showed up. Well, if you come frequently enough, if you show up frequently enough, if there's some consistency and routine, kids will come, families will engage with you. But if you don't have consistent follow through and don't show up, then it is harder for you to feel like you're a part of that school community. And it's a hard ask when you're also running a business or you're also have a whole nother job. So trying to really work with somebody in my position or somebody who has the ability to make sure that we're all on the same page and then set that into motion. And we've had amazing, successful partnerships. So that's a little bit, like I said, it could be a long conversation, but that's what I would say so far.
That's great. It's great. Emily, what would you add about partnerships from your perspective? How do you shape them? How do you maintain them and strengthen them?
For sure. Yeah. So similar to as Carla was saying, I think our consistency is key for us. So districts are one of our huge partners, community colleges are another big partner. But all of our coordinators and open campus live in the communities where they work with students. So they're all embedded there. Many of them have very long standing, may have grown up there in those communities. And so they are there. They're in the community. They're not just popping in from Corvallis or something, right? Driving in somewhere rural, popping in and out. They're there full time. They're consistent. And so I think that is huge for us in maintaining those partnerships. And for us, I feel like sometimes in the community, we feel like we can be a little bit of a neutral convener, right? We're not recruiting for Oregon State, and we're also not part of like the local government or the industry or the school district or the community college even necessarily. We're kind of someone that can sort of make those connections in between. And so we try to do that, working closely with partners and just in ways that benefit our students and communities. So we have a good sense of like Cheney had mentioned, like what jobs are available. Like, is this something you can actually do in this area? You're really interested in this career, but you want to live here. Is this even a job that's available? And so maintaining those connections with partners that, kind of keep us on top of all that information, both of what's happening in a broader view, but also very locally as well. But yeah, we literally don't do anything without partners. For us, our partnerships are so key. We, of course, being in the schools is very much because they allow that and work with us. We have several shared positions with community colleges, seeing that value of having somebody in the community that can work through, high school or even earlier through community college onto a transfer program potentially, to a 4-year. So yeah, I think for us, partnerships are everything, and we take them very seriously, and yeah, try to be really consistent and committed.
That's great. I love that point about the deep connection to the community. And also I'm hearing in what both of you are saying, really the need to understand the values and interests and needs on both sides of a partnership, and how are we really taking time to find that shared vision and ability to work together. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today and for sharing your insight. I really appreciate both of you, and I am excited to now invite Dr. Christopher Elliott to join us on screen. And we'll say goodbye to Emily and Carla. Dr. Elliott is the Vice Provost for Extension Services at Oregon State University, and we are thrilled to have you here with us, Chris. Would love to hear first just what's standing out to you from what we've heard from Dr. Mosley and Emily and Carla so far today.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm looking down. I took feverish notes. I think the first thing that I would share is I come to this work with a bias of being a K through 12 educator and administrator. So deeply believe in this work, and just a shout out to all of the educators, whether it's a formal K through 12 classroom or informal learning and all the places in between. This is really hard work, but also, as we know, very, very important work. And I think all of us can think about some educator or hopefully multiple educators that had an impact on our lives. Like Chania as well, I'm a product of 4-H, as well as agricultural education. And in terms of CTE, I think, starting off with Cheney's comments about all of the research, he had a limited amount of time. I'm sure if you gave him a full hour, we could keep going, right? There's so many examples and stories of how engaging students through career and technical education shows huge gains, huge benefits for all students, regardless of their background, identity, geography, culture, et cetera. And so I think what's really important is to think about ways to engage that sort of learning environment in a way that meets the needs of the local community. I really like the research he cited around, or just the age 3 comment about skills, super important, wage, and demand. I feel as though when I look across the country and in our state, there's a lot of places where we don't have all 3 of those. And so just really emphasizing the fact that to be successful for students, we really have to lean into all 3. Going back to my experience, I went into education, I think, because I wasn't such a great student. And so for me, and I think for a lot of students, contextualizing learning is so important. And I know there is, still some baggage of, back in the day of what we called vocational education and the trends to, in certain cases, track students into one field or the other, or these are college students, college prep, but these are not. And I think we've in most cases gotten away from that. And we talk about college and career readiness. So students that are going to college, a CTE is a great way for them to learn in a, again, contextualized setting. Why am I learning this? Well, you're learning this in the context of a medical field or agriculture, et cetera, or aviation. And then when you talk about moving to what Carla and Emily were referring to, we also know, one of the things that struck me about Carla was the whole child. So CTE, a big way, an important way to contextualize learning, but we're also talking about social emotional learning. We're talking about caring for all children, all youth, because in many circumstances, of course, we know all youth need that. But for many students, they may not be getting that in other places outside of the learning environment, whether that's in school or our additional non-formal learning. So it's critically important when we think about someone believing in them, someone, standing up and having their back, helping them with confidence. I think that's really important when we think about college and career readiness. Someone believes in those youth. And so really appreciate those comments Carla made. And then Emily talking about, we have to be focused on broadening horizons and opening students' minds up to what could be. And, I wouldn't say where I grew up as being frontier, but it was a small town of 1,000 people. And so what I knew was kind of where I grew up. And then through my involvement in 4-H and FFA, I got to travel. I'll never forget visiting Cal Poly as a freshman, and thinking, whoa, this is, number one, it was a huge town, even though it's not. But seeing the opportunities and seeing what was possible, that's what sort of got me on the path to thinking about, okay, maybe college is for me and maybe I see myself here. So those are a few of the highlights. I could go on forever, but I'm just really, really excited on what the three speakers shared with us.
Yeah, that's great. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about and wondering, kind of again, thinking about your experience with 4-H and thinking about all that extension does, right? We've heard a little bit about the role of open campus. You've just shared some other examples. As you're thinking about the role that extension can play, what would you encourage people to think about in terms of the role they play in college and career readiness and what they can do?
Yeah, great question. I'm putting my educator hat back on, and even administrator like Cheney. That's how we know each other a little bit, is through Metro Nashville Public Schools. I was the director of STEM there. Our time overlapped a little bit, and I think there is not an administrator or educator out there who would not welcome additional opportunities for their students to learn. So I think about what extension does really well. And certainly we have in-school programs. Our Forge program does a lot of that. Outdoor school is considered an in-school program. But I think providing educators with another way to connect students outside of those normal school hours is really valuable. And so the first thing I would say, I know in Oregon, we have a myriad of opportunities. Certainly the ones mentioned, open campus, Emily was talking about our Juntos program. There's also a lot of opportunities through 4-H and after school programs that focus on STEM and CTE learning. We have programs on campus. So I guess my messaging would be, you probably have a local extension office near you. Search it. I guarantee you, even outside of Oregon, you'll find it. And just do that initial outreach to say, here's our situation in our school. Here's what might be helpful to our students' learning. And I'd be willing to bet that extension office, through the statewide support that they would have, as well as their local resources, want to partner with that school or that educator on making some of those things happen. And often that means we can provide that service, or that state's extension, or we know who can. I think that's the other opportunity, is we're a great convener, and we may say, you know what, that's not our focus area here, but we know exactly who does that work, and let us make that connection to you. So, Emily talked about relationships. We build those relationships directly through our partnerships, and then we know folks doing great work that we don't do that we can also bring to the table.
That's great. That's great. Well, thinking about the important role of OSU Extension as a convener, that's what we've been doing for the last 10 weeks with the Oregon Youth in Focus series. So I'd love to pull us up even a higher level if you're willing. And really, we've covered a ton of ground in these last 10 weeks in this webinar series. Is there a key takeaway or a couple of key takeaways from the series overall that you hope those who have been attending or watching will take with them from the series?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to take, and summarize everything. There's been so much great work. I think for me, one of the things, I'll go back to what Carla said, is whole child. I think, we can remember growing up. I think for most of us, there were times where we lacked confidence, or we needed someone to maybe believe in us more, or just growing up is tough, right? I think now youth, the challenges are even greater. There are a lot of opportunities for critical consumers of what they read, what they see. AI could generate my face and voice having this conversation, and I could be at a beach somewhere. I mean, we're that close. So I think it's going to be really important for us all, regardless of our role when we're talking about our work with youth, to really prepare them for this world that is rapidly emerging in front of us. And AI in particular, how are they going to thrive in a world where AI becomes more prominent, not only in our workforce development, but just in their daily lives? I think those are going to be really critical. And so I say whole child because it's not just this strict education boundary that we're talking about. It's everything, because they're going to be inundated, and they already are, with information from the moment that they wake up until the moment that they go to bed. And so I think it's really important for us, all the people on this call who are thoughtful about youth development or thoughtful about preparing youth for the world, that we lean into that work probably more than we ever have.
That's great. That's great. Well, and I mentioned I had the opportunity yesterday to talk with and hear from some young people, and one of them said the thing they would most want adults to remember is we're human, so we're complicated. And so that element of whole child really fits there too, of really remembering all that young people are bringing to the table as we think about their readiness and thriving and who they want to be, who they already are, and who they're becoming. So I just want to take a minute to thank you, Chris, but also thank everyone who's been engaging with us over the past 3 months. We have really enjoyed doing this series. We hope that you will go back and view the recordings. I will share those in the chat right now. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week.
Thanks, everybody.